Welcome to Ultra Motivate. I'm glad you're here. Before we begin, take a breath, because what you're about to read is not just a story. It's a mirror that might show you the things you've forgotten about yourself. This story is written for you, for your strength, for your journey, and for the version of you that is still fighting in silence. So sit back, relax, and prepare your mind to walk through a path that may look like fiction, but speaks a truth you have lived in your own way. There was a time in Ethan's life when everything seemed predictable. The days looked the same, the nights felt the same, and inside his chest there was a quiet heaviness he couldn't name. People around him thought he was doing great. He smiled when he had to, nodded when he was supposed to, and pretended everything was fine. But deep inside, he knew something was missing, something important, something powerful. One cold morning, he stood by his window watching the wind push the leaves across the street. There was a strange calm in the air, a sense that life was about to shift in a direction he had not planned. He didn't know why, but a quiet voice inside him whispered, "Wake up, today is different." He didn't understand the voice, but he felt it. He walked out of his room and made his way to his small desk. It was cluttered with papers, notebooks, and the remnants of ideas he once believed in but abandoned halfway. He sat down, stared at them, and felt a familiar sting, something between regret and longing. How many things have I started but never finished? He asked himself. Silence answered. It wasn't that he lacked talent. It wasn't even that he lacked opportunity. What he lacked was belief. The kind of belief that stays with you even on the days when nothing makes sense. That morning, something inside him shifted. He didn't know how to explain it, but he could sense a beginning forming inside his chest. So he stood up, he put on his jacket, and he walked out. The journey didn't slow down. In fact, it felt like the world itself had begun to shift in response to the strength that was slowly awakening within you. Every step forward carried a quiet tension, an unspoken reminder that growth never comes without resistance. Yet even in that resistance, there was something powerful, something almost sacred, pulling you toward the person you were becoming. You could feel it now more than ever. Life wasn't testing you to defeat you. It was shaping you, molding you, chiseling away the doubts you once believed were permanent. Every challenge you faced became another layer of strength added to your character. And even though the weight of it all sometimes felt overwhelming, there was a part of you, small but persistent, that refused to give up. You started noticing things you once overlooked. The silence between your thoughts became clearer. The fears that used to cloud your decisions began losing their grip. You realized that sometimes the loudest battles are fought quietly within the mind, far away from what the world can see. And in those silent battles, you were learning how to rise. Yet the journey was far from over. In fact, it felt like you were only just beginning. The road stretched long and unending ahead of you, its path hidden by moments of uncertainty and moments of hope, all tangled together. But this time, you were no longer afraid of not knowing what comes next. You were learning to trust the mystery of the future. Every sunrise felt different now. It wasn't just another day, it was another chance, another opening, another quiet reminder that even after the darkest night, the light always returns. And with each dawn, you felt a little stronger, a little braver, a little more prepared to face whatever waited for you. Sometimes you paused and looked back, not to regret, but to understand. You began to see how far you had already come. The person you used to be felt distant, like a story you no longer fully recognized. The path ahead stretched like a long whisper of destiny, winding into horizons you could not yet see. But something inside you had shifted, subtly, quietly, profoundly. It wasn't a loud transformation. It wasn't dramatic or sudden. It was the kind of change that grows in the background, like dawn slowly rising behind mountains. You don't notice the exact moment it begins, but you can feel the world getting brighter. And as you continued walking, you began to understand something important. Every step that once felt heavy now carried purpose. Even your fears started to feel different, not as enemies, but as reminders that you were moving into new territory. Fear only appears when you are expanding, when you're crossing boundaries you never dared to cross before. You were crossing those boundaries now. Each moment felt like a test, yes, but it also felt like an invitation. Life was inviting you to become more than you believed, more than you imagined, more than you once allowed yourself to be. The thought of it was both terrifying and beautiful. For the first time, you realized that the path wasn't just shaping your future, it was reshaping your identity. The wind carried the sounds of distant memories, the ones you had tried to forget. You remember the days when you felt lost, the nights when you felt invisible, the moments when you doubted whether you had any strength left. But those memories didn't hurt anymore. Instead, they served as silent evidence of your resilience. Every memory was a stone, and every stone had become part of the foundation you were now building your life upon. As you walked further, you felt something else too. Something deep, something ancient. A sense of connection to every other person who had ever walked through darkness, searching for light. You realized you were not the only one learning, not the only one struggling, not the only one fighting silent battles. This journey was universal. Every human heart had walked a version of it. The path ahead stretched farther than your eyes could follow, disappearing into a soft blue haze where the horizon met the unknown. But something in your steps had changed. They didn't feel heavy anymore. They didn't feel uncertain. They felt deliberate, purposeful, as if each one knew exactly where it needed to land, even if you didn't. You weren't just walking forward now. You were moving into yourself, into a stronger, quieter, more grounded version of who you were becoming. The silence around you didn't feel empty. It felt alive. Alive with possibility. Alive with questions. Alive with the quiet strength that grows only when you pause long enough to listen. And you were listening. Listening to your heartbeat, steady and strong. Listening to your thoughts, calmer than before. Listening to that small voice inside you that whispered, "Keep going." You didn't know where the road would lead, but you were no longer afraid of the unknown. The unknown now felt like a companion, mysterious, unpredictable, but strangely comforting. It held things you could not yet imagine, pieces of your future that were waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. As you continued forward, the landscape around you began to shift. The ground softened beneath your feet, the air thickened with warmth, and distant colors began to glow like embers waking from sleep. It felt as if the world was changing in rhythm with your inner transformation. You paused for a moment, allowing the weight of everything to settle between your shoulders. Not the weight of burdens, but the weight of awareness. You realized something profound. You were no longer running from your past. You were walking toward your future. And that shift changed everything. For so long, you had tried to escape the echoes of old pain, old mistakes, old fears. But now you saw them differently. They weren't enemies. They weren't chains. They were chapters. Chapters that had shaped you, strengthened you, prepared you. The plain stretched endlessly before you, but instead of feeling overwhelmed by its vastness, you felt a quiet excitement rising within your chest. Like your spirit recognized that something important was waiting out there, somewhere ahead, somewhere beyond the visible line of the horizon. It wasn't loud excitement. It wasn't chaotic. It was steady like a long inhale before a significant moment. You continued walking, and with every step the ground beneath you felt gentler, softer, more welcoming. It was the kind of terrain that allowed you to slow your pace without losing momentum, where each step carried meaning rather than effort. The sky above you shifted into deeper shades of gold and blue, as if reflecting your internal transformation. It wasn't the sky changing, it was you. You were learning to see the world through a new lens. A lens shaped by growth, by resilience, by the courage you no longer questioned. You looked forward, not because you expected answers, but because you were ready for whatever came next. The wind brushed against your skin like an unseen guide, pushing you gently forward. You didn't resist. You didn't fear the direction. You simply followed, trusting that the journey itself had its own wisdom that would unfold exactly when you needed it. As you walked, you noticed the smallest details that you once would have ignored. The way the grass swayed in slow rhythm, the way light shifted across the land, the way silence carried meaning rather than emptiness. Even your own footsteps had a new sound, firmer, more grounded, more confident. For the first time, you weren't walking to escape anything. You weren't running. You weren't searching out of desperation. You were expanding. Every breath, every step, every thought seemed to stretch you wider inside, expanding your capacity for patience, for strength, for presence. And with that expansion came clarity. You began to understand something crucial. The journey wasn't just changing you. The evening light softened as you walked, wrapping the world in a warm glow that felt almost protective. The colors around you deepened, gold melting into amber, amber shifting into soft shades of violet. It was the kind of light that made everything feel both alive and peaceful, as if the world itself was taking a long breath. You felt that breath inside you. Slow, steady, grounded. Your steps matched the rhythm of the fading day, each one carrying a quiet confidence that didn't exist in you before. You weren't rushing. You weren't dragging. You were simply moving forward with calm intention, letting the journey unfold as naturally as the sky unfolding into twilight. The path ahead was smooth, almost too smooth, but you knew better than to trust appearances. The journey had taught you that the real challenges were often invisible, the ones inside you, the doubts, the old fears, the whispers of the past. But tonight, those whispers were silent. Your mind felt clearer than it had in a long time. Not because problems had vanished, but because you were no longer controlled by them. You were learning how to think without falling apart, how to breathe without tensing up, how to move forward without constantly questioning your strength. And that was a victory few people ever noticed in themselves. As the sky deepened into darker shades, you noticed something at the edge of the horizon, a soft glow. It was faint but consistent. Not a fire, not a star, something else, something different. Curiosity warmed inside you, but it wasn't the frantic curiosity of someone searching for answers. It was the calm curiosity of someone ready to explore whatever came next. You kept walking toward it, not knowing what it was, but trusting that it was part of your unfolding path. The glow grew brighter the closer you came, but the ground remained steady. The air shifted, carrying a quiet energy that made your skin tingle. It felt like something important was waiting ahead, not a test. Life has a way of circling back to the moments that changed you. Sometimes it feels like everything you lost, everything you broke, and everything you failed, it still echoes somewhere inside your mind. But the truth is, every echo has a message. And now, after everything, he finally understood that message. He stood at the edge of the old bridge, the same bridge where he once felt defeated, the same place where he almost gave up on himself. Back then, he could hardly breathe under the weight of his failures. But today, he stood taller, not because life got easier, but because he grew stronger. He looked at the sky. It wasn't the same sky he saw years ago. Back then, the sky felt heavy, dark, and distant. Today, it looked open and endless. It reminded him that life doesn't cage you, the mind does. And once the mind finds freedom, the world opens like a door that was always waiting to be pushed. He thought about the journey that brought him here, the nights when he cried silently, the mornings when he woke up tired, the days when he failed again and again, and the moments when he wanted to quit everything. But somewhere in all those painful moments, something beautiful happened. He didn't even notice it at first. It was slow, almost invisible, but it was real. He was changing. He was growing. He was becoming someone he never expected he could become. He remembered the people who doubted him. He remembered the ones who left. He remembered the moments when the world turned its back on him. And yet, he survived. Not because someone saved him, not because someone pushed him forward, but because at some point he realized no one was coming to rescue him. He had to rescue himself. That realization didn't make him bitter. It made him powerful. He learned that the strongest people in the world are not the ones who never fall. They're the ones who rise after every fall, even when everything inside them screams to stay down. He closed his eyes and took a slow breath. He